Swastiastu. Hello, good evening, students. So here we are again. We meet again at this video for the fifth meeting in our course for English course in Architecture Department in the Science and Technology Faculty of Ngurah Rai University. So today we will discuss about history in architecture, what the impact of history in our architecture until now. Okay, first of all, I will introduce to you what is architecture in the term of history first. So this is the image. Can you consider this structure as an architecture? Architecture is the art and science of designing and constructing building. So how art and science meet and collaborate together and becoming one into architecture. In the beginning of the architecture, it can be traced back to the days, even to the period of cavemen. You know cavemen, so it's a group of people that live in cave. So it's called prehistoric period, and it is called prehistoric architecture. It can be traced back to the earliest man living in caves and tents. So the first architecture for man is in the cave and tents. So our ancestors live in a cave, they carve the cave, or they use the existing cave to live in, and then they put their history on the wall of the cave. They put their painting as a reminder to their descendants later, or they live in tents, that is from animal tusks, animal bones, and their fur to make the tents comfortable and warm enough for them to live in the night from the cold, but it's also cool enough for stay at the morning or in the evening. So there are prehistoric architecture example is when moving around houses and wall dwelling, like this one. This is the example of prehistoric architecture. Another prehistoric architecture from wall houses and wall dwellings, the earliest. So they built houses from stone. Some of the examples, they use whatever they can find in the nature and how to make it cope with that. Okay, some even building stone monuments is also being called prehistoric architecture also. So the example is Stonehenge in England. So it's a prehistoric architecture. And then the next chapter of history in architecture, of course, you cannot forget the ancient Egypt, because as man evolved and then their ability to build, to create architecture also evolved. And ancient Egyptian architecture is the architecture of ancient Egypt, one of the most influential civilizations throughout history, which developed a vast array of diverse structure and great architectural monuments, including pyramids and temples. So ancient Egypt is never left behind as a period of architecture history, and we should always mention it. The ancient Egyptian create what we call now pyramid and their temples with their ability and their knowledge to create that kind of unique architecture. Pyramid of Giza. Okay. The ancient Egyptians are famous for building the pyramid. The pyramids were built as the burial places for Egyptian kings. There are still over 80 pyramids in Egypt today. They are all more than 3,000 years old. The architects of this pyramid were very skilled in mathematics, in technical drawing, and in knowledge of the position of the sun and stars, because the pyramid is believed as astronomic knowledge to build. The pyramids were carefully designed to be in straight line with, for example, a certain star constellation in a certain time of year, or sunrise on a particular day, or because the pyramid is used as a burial for Egyptian king, the constellation of the stars when the king were born become the position of the pyramid also for the reminder of when the king was born. We cannot forget also that ancient Egyptians also create temples and statues. For instance, this kind of statues, and you don't forget the Sphinx. Another example of ancient Egyptian temples, the ruins of ancient Egyptian temples. And then the next chapter or period of architecture is ancient Greek. So ancient Greek is a very specific and influential type of design which was based off the post and lintel system. So it's their characteristics when they found their post and lintel system. So the post and lintel system is made up from columns, which are large upright posts with a roof or architrave over the top. This type of architecture began with the Greek, but has persisted throughout the ages to live on today. It's one of their legacy for the architecture today that we can use the post and lintel system in our building for today. Even though it may have been simple, the Greek created a wonderful and lasting legacy of architecture. The columns and architrave were carved with leaves and flowers, scenes of battles, and mythological creatures. The columns were decorated with line and bases and capitals, which top of the columns and connected them to the architrave. Okay, the architecture building from the ancient Greek, for example, is the Parthenon in Greece, and Acropolis also is the ruin of Acropolis. Erechtheion, the detail, the columns that is made from statues as a column. And then we have Epidaurus Theater also, it's a ruin of ancient Greek architecture. The next period is the Roman Empire, the architecture in Roman. The earliest Roman architecture borrowed heavily from Greek architecture because Roman and Greek is not far the difference of years. So after the Greek Empire, the knowledge from Greek Empire and then used in the Roman Empire. But however, the Romans quickly adopted their own style and were soon inspiring the architecture of many other countries. So it's not so it's okay for you to copying or inspired by the architecture before you, but you should have your own style. You adopt that style and create your own, like the Roman did in their Greek architecture before. One of the most important additions that the Roman brought to architecture is the arc system. So it's the arc, like or in the image above, below is the arc, and when we usually use the arc system in the above section for the doors. The wall in the doors is using arc to suspend the weight of the doors, so we make our doors look like an arc. Using concrete, bricks, and the concept of the arc, Rome was able to provide many of its citizens with water. Another legacy from the Roman architecture is how they control, how they supply the cities or the household with water. Aqueduct is a water bridges were built throughout Rome. Their arc structure bringing water to areas far away from natural water supplies. So the Roman Empire, the Roman architecture teach us how to bring water to the city or to the house, to the household, so we don't have to rely on transporting water with horses or with manpower, but we do it because we have the system for it. This is the example for it, how the aqueduct is taking the water from reservoir and then to the city. How they create this system is our legacy for today's cities. Some of the aqueduct that is still in touch in Rome. Other than aqueduct, the arc quickly led to the dome ceilings and used in many houses and buildings. Because arc and dome structure can share weight evenly, the concept was soon being used throughout the city and around the world. So the arc system, the arc concept that is used in everywhere, in any occasion. So they can create a free of columns buildings without column by using the system, and they can use dome. They can create dome that is hollow inside, that is no column in the interior that can disturb the view of the people inside. The next period is Gothic castle. So early medieval architecture was a continuation of Roman architecture, relying on the rounded arc and barrel vault. During the early Middle Age, everything was built with the idea of protection in mind. Castles then weren't simply giant stone structures sitting out in the open, waiting for someone to come along, knock on the door, and walk in. Rather, castles were building within high walls and contained what was really like a small village inside the wall. Gothic castle or early medieval period is when the structure of a wall is very tall, very thick, because it is the same period of time when the Chinese people invented gunpowder. So it's the same time with the invention of the gunpowder. So, and then they use the gunpowder in building weapons, and the weapon considered very dangerous for the castle if the wall is very thin from wood and so on, and to protect the king and his family, they have to build a tall and thick walls from stones, brick, and so on. This is the example, the ruin of Gothic castle, and surrounding the castle is a village, small village, to support the castle. Okay, so some of the castle, and you may know that one of these castle is inspiring the Disney logos. So it's like a castle from Disney's film Rapunzel or Frozen or something like that. The next period from Gothic castle is Gothic churches and cathedral. So thanks to the new inventions, later medieval building allowed to weight the building to be transferred from the wall to support column outside the main structure. So this is when they found out that they can transfer the weight of the building to the outside from the main structure. This will make windows now possible, because before in the Gothic castle there are very rare windows. Even though they have windows, it's small windows, not very big. But when the period of Gothic churches and cathedral, they can find a way to make windows possible. So the structure often featured ribbed vault, pointed arc, and sharp spires. Cathedral and churches could now be built much higher than before, and the filling inside them is now one of the soaring upwards vertically, an appropriate experimental effect for the nature of these sacred places. So the places, the churches and cathedral is made with the pointed arc, and they have windows now, and so they can create the nature of the sacred places. Okay, so this is the image that I found, Gothic churches and cathedrals. Please do mind this. This is when they don't know about columns. They only know that the weight of the building has to be supported by itself. So this is the interior of it, and they don't have any conventional structure like we do today. And then the other period is the Chinese, Japanese, and Indian achievement, the Asian achievement. In the 19th century, architecture flourished greatly thanks to the development of resources. Designs influenced by Chinese, Japanese, and Indian art and architecture were popular in the earliest 19th century. The Chinese architecture imposed more on decorative aspect as compared to the constructive aspect. The Chinese introduced a new art of mosques and palace of India, Turkey, Persia, and Spain to the world. The Chinese architecture, how they achieve their architecture that makes our world today is different. And then we have Japanese architecture, and then Indian architecture with their mosques, with their temple, Taj Mahal. Then the next period is modern design. The combination of early and modern architecture took place as years went by. People started incorporating the ancient architecture with the modern architecture to create eye-catching buildings. As a result, architecture became a mixture of past and present in different high-profile structures. Early and modern architecture are well blended. Any building today, regardless of whatever is commercial buildings, temple or palace, you will observe that ancient architecture in it. So every building that you see is actually have a trace of ancient architecture in it. How modern it is, you can ensure that the building has a trace from ancient architecture. The legacy of ancient architecture is everywhere, including in modern buildings. Like this one, the first skyscraper in the world is built in St. Louis, and it was only 10 stories and built between 1890 and 1891. The first skyscraper that only 10 stories high. And then now we have the tallest skyscraper that is in Burj Khalifa in Dubai, and it's a whopping 2,717 feet tall. It's almost 1 kilometer tall. So that is the difference between our first skyscraper and our tallest today. So this is the example, the Burj Khalifa in Dubai, the length of it, and then from the Great Pyramid of Giza to the Eiffel Tower, Empire State Building, Petronas Tower, Taipei 101, World Trade Center, and Willis Tower, GN Tower, KVL, TV mast, and we have Warsaw Radio mast, and then the highest is Burj Khalifa. Before we have the Golden Bridge in San Francisco, and then we have the Hoover Dam. Our achievement for the modern architecture, how we can create this kind of architecture is very rewarding. Okay, I think that's it for today. I hope you enjoy my video, and I hope you be inspired and how the architecture is developed from our cavemen to today's architecture. Thank you for listening. I hope you have a great day and see you again next week. Om